Hello, my wonderful players. I am a lawful good sorcerer of the light arts, and I am here to help you to find your lost companion. It will only require the sacrificing of one of your souls for all eternity. Or maybe he's not necessarily lawful good. Well, as per your request, so this is your fault, I'm looking at alignments and just what do alignments do for us and what don't they do. So this is literally the video on 5 ideas around using alignments and making sure that they don't get in the way and that they actually add fun to the game and to your playing experience rather than simply constrain you to being banished by certain types of magic. So the alignment system. I will start by saying that I have never been in favor of the alignment system because of the problems that it raises. So point number 1, why is alignment bad? Alignment is bad is because, and this is my opinion, it is from a certain point of view. Now the point of view is prescribed in most of the game settings as these are good guys, these are bad guys, and so this is how the world works. This is a good action, this is a bad action, and only good people can take control of good things and only bad people can do bad things. And generally speaking, when one differentiates from that, one gets punished for doing so. Now, that to me is a very, very black and white way of looking at a setting, and it also is very restrictive. If you are looking at it from a personal moral perspective, what I see as being good, you might see as being evil. Which one of us gets the appropriate alignment of me being lawful good and you being lawful evil? Well, it's a grey area and it's very difficult to define. A paladin who worships the god of evil, does they? Using that sentence is definitely evil. There's no question about that. But a paladin who wants to worship an evil god, do they have to still be lawful good? Nowadays they've made it a little bit more risky. They can be any alignment. But surely an evil paladin who's following an evil god and who does evil acts is a lawful good character. They are doing exactly what they believe to be lawful and good, which is going around slaughtering their enemies and consuming their bodies. So alignment for me is a bit of a tricky thing. However, it is incorporated into the large percentage of games that we play, and as a result, there are things that we need to take into account because alignment is a real thing in those games. So that's why alignment is bad for me. Why is alignment good? Point number 2. Alignment is good insofar as it allows you to have parameters and definitions for your character to guide your character in certain actions and on their journey. Now, when you are properly role-playing, when you are really immersed in the character will behave and act differently from how you would in real life. As the player, you are most likely neutral good. You will follow the laws when they apply to you, and when no one is going to get hurt, you might just maybe not follow those laws precisely. So you're more of a neutral good person. You generally don't want to hurt other people. Your character, however, might be someone who is by-the-book stickler for laws, or perhaps they're an anarchist and they feel that laws are too constraining and that we should be driven more by our heart than by cruel, merciless laws, in which case you're more chaotic. So there are many ways of expressing a character. The alignment system simply allows you to have a framework within which to express it better, or perhaps with more clarity. What I find the biggest benefit, however, of having an alignment system in place and following that alignment is when your character deviates from that alignment. And that's the bulk of today's video, is what happens when there's deviation. Now, that, for me, is point number 3. Deviation. When can you deviate from your alignment? Well, that's a choice that you are going to have to make, and it's entirely a narrative choice. If your character is ostensibly good and there is a torture that needs to happen of a prisoner, and that prisoner is of the same race or is not known to be evil but to simply be a bystander who has the information, will your character stand back and let it happen, or will your character intervene and stop it from happening because it violates their alignment code? Well, this is a purely narrative decision. There's no dice rolls, as far as I know, that can be used to determine whether your character does something or not. Now, I have had players in the past who've got what they call their moral check, where they roll a percentile die, and if they get over 50%, they do the one thing, and if they get under 50%, they do the other. It is a role-playing game, so rolling dice to determine the outcome is entirely permissible, but I think it takes away the opportunity that you have as a player to tell a better story. Now, you need to decide, would my character do this or would my character do that? Ultimately, whichever choice you choose to go, you've then got to decide how the character is going to express that. Is my character going to allow the prisoner to go free so they don't get tortured? Will my character volunteer to do the torturing so that I at least have taken responsibility for it and that I am taking ownership of this act and that I'm not just standing back and letting somebody else do the dirty work which I don't necessarily agree with? Or is my character simply going to intervene and say, no, we cannot possibly torture this person. It is simply out of the question. In which case, then, there are so many spin-offs to the narrative that other players' characters might assure your character there's no torture that's going to happen. Why don't you go up on deck and look at some charts and things? Now, if you go back and watch some videos on when is metagaming good and when is metagaming bad, this is where one of those instances happens. You as the player know that the characters of your fellow players are going to torture that poor bastard to death. But they're simply giving your character an opportunity to leave so that your character can go off and do something and not be involved. It solves the alignment problem. It creates an element of tension because now what you do is you leave, but then you remember that your character left your cloak behind in the room, so you have to walk back into the room. Again, this creates a moment of potential comedy or of potential drama when, if you walk into the room and the person is lying in pieces, you can ask what happened, to which your fellow players will immediately respond it was suicide. So the idea of using your alignment to tell a better story is really about how to tell the story from a different way, and sometimes challenging it is important. Now, moving beyond that, pushing it to the next level, is when you purposefully break your character's alignment. You allow someone to burn to death because you're not risking your own life. And if you are a good character, that would be seen as a violation of good character. On the other hand, if you trap someone in a room and you vent all of the oxygen causing their death, that's an evil act. That's a violation of a neutral character. If you choose to take sides more than the other side, then you're deviating away from being a neutral character. So there are many ways in which you can obviously violate your own alignment. Now, in some cases, the GM or the DM will offer some kind of punitive effect. You start to lose your spell powers, your god doesn't like you anymore, etc., etc., etc. That's for the GM to decide. For you to decide is how does your character feel themselves? I'll never forget when I purposefully committed a small shoplifting crime when I was in my younger days. I was the folly of youth. I stole a book. I still haven't read that book 25 years later on, and I went and put money back onto the counter of the bookstore from which I stole it. I was absolutely mortified by what I had done once I had got over the thrill of doing it. I got home, I put the book on the shelf, and I cried, for I had failed myself and everything that I had been raised to believe in. And to that day, I still have that book, and I probably will keep it until my dying day as a reminder of just what a stupid thing it was for such a stupid purpose, and how I felt having done it. So my alignment, if you like, was tested and failed that day. But the repercussions of that failure, the self-recrimination, the self-damnation of having done that blot upon my character, is a reaffirming story. It is something that encourages me never to do it again and to pause and think, oh, remember that, remember that. So no, I will not bend on my particular moral compass on that particular issue because of that past. So by bringing in those kind of options, when your character does violate the story, have them explore that emotionally. How do they feel? They're an evil character, but they did an act of good. They saved that orphan, even though there was no reason to do so. And now the orphan is being grateful and is running around as their page. How does that make an evil character feel? Maybe it drives the evil character to want to drive that page away because the page reminds them that there might be something better out there than just serving oneself. Perhaps the evil character starts to warm to the page, starts to understand the idea of camaraderie and of the benefits of doing things for one's fellow that are not in any way going to give back to you as the selfish individual who is evil. So there's a journey that starts to be prescribed by changing, violating, forcing things to happen in a different kind of alignment way. And of course, then if the GM is punishing you by having your gods abandon you or hurl things at you until you repent and ask for forgiveness, that's also story-driven. So that's something that's very, very, very useful. So if you then look at the last 2 points is how can it be used? It can be used in all of these different ways to drive a better narrative for your character. But, and this is the final point, is that it can push you as the storyteller to trying to find interesting solutions to explore an emotional response rather than a mathematical response, to explore an emotional narrative which really allows you to understand and comprehend why people do things. Is a white lie acceptable? Is a complete lie acceptable? If you are dealing with someone who is emotionally damaged, is it all right to give them false information? This is where you can explore that in a relatively safe environment. Your GM and fellow players will react accordingly, and they will react in their own way, which is what makes it so much more interesting. You can't predict how these things will happen. And when other characters break their alignment, when other characters violate things, be a good player. Be aware that that's happening and say, well, that was very uncharacteristic of you, John. I'm surprised you did that. I think it's for the best. Or, well, I thought you were better than that. I was obviously wrong. I don't agree with what you did, but it's done now. So all I can hope is that you learn from this experience and you move on. You can use those so it's a positive reaction, it's a negative reaction, but it's a narrative reaction, and it's a reaction which pushes you to the next level. It means that you're actually aware of what your other players' characters are doing, and by and large you are aware of the game, and you're driving this really interesting story. Of course, you don't want to take it to the extremes, as I advocate always. You don't want to take it to the extremes where every single decision is this Mother Teresa moment where you're trying to figure out what is the right thing, what's the wrong thing, and then you spend days locked in your cabin listening to dark, heavy metal music with your hair dyed black, screaming at everyone saying that you don't deserve to live. That's not fun for anyone either. So it's about moderation in terms of those responses. Anyway, I hope that this brief video on alignment and how we can use it from a narrative perspective to make our games and ourselves better has been of use to you. Now, if you want me to do the breakdown of the alignments, now there are many, many, many alignments out there, and if you don't know what they are, you can go and find them out. There's plenty of websites that deal with alignment, and I've got pictures of characters that have got this alignment or that alignment, etc., etc., etc. But if you want me to break down alignments as I did with the different types of personality, I am happy to do so, because I think that there is oftentimes some confusion as to the alignments, and I obviously have my own thoughts on how to use them to being a better player rather than to just use them as a descriptor. So until next time, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and if you want to see more videos that are more in depth on certain topics, such as the Patreon video this week is looking at how to use traps in a different way, join me on Patreon, where we look into things in a little bit more of an in-depth way. Until next time, whatever your choice, I hope that your gaming experience has improved and that you are having fun whilst rolling dice with your fellow human beings on this planet, or other if they are not from this planet. Until next time, happy playing.